Welcome to Honest HR, the podcast for informed and aspiring HR professionals intent on transforming workplace challenges into golden opportunities.
Every week, we chat with industry experts to bring you insights, trends, and actionable advice through relatable stories from the real world of HR.
Honest HR is a SHRM podcast, and by joining us, you're helping to build a more engaged workforce and drive organizational success. I'm Wendy Fong.
I'm Amber Clayton.
And I'm Monique Akanbi.
Now, let's get honest.
Welcome to Honest HR. I'm your host, Monique Akanbi, and with us today, we have Certrice and Dr. Victoria. I'm here to talk about the topic of allyship. And so I am really excited to learn more about this topic. I will share with you all when the topics were introduced by our team around what we wanted to have a podcast about. Allyship definitely intrigued me, so I'm really excited to learn a little more, just as well as our audience also. But my first question to you all is, one, who is Certrice? And then two, who is Dr. Victoria? But then, how did you all meet? So we'll go with the first one. Who is Certrice?
Yeah. So Certrice Shipley recently got married, though, so Certrice Grice is on some things.
Yes.
But
Congratulations.
Thank you. And my background, well, both of us, our background is industrial organizational psychology, so science of human behavior in the workplace. We are both entrepreneurs, own diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firms, and passionate about taking data-driven approaches to DEI, but also passionate about inclusion being a behavior and, allyship as well. So excited to talk about that today, but I'll let you chat a little bit, V.
Thank you. So Dr. Victoria Mattingly, some people know me by Dr. V. I'm CEO and founder of Mattingly Solutions, and I'll plug Certrice's company as well, Plan to Action, whereas Certrice's company tends to focus more on early stage DEI, so organizations that are just getting started on their DEI journey and need that support with strategy and function and structure. Mattingly focuses more on later stage, which includes Inclusalytics, the book that we co-wrote together, which I also have a line of services that fall under that. So taking a more data-driven approach to DEI. And then the second line of services is allyship. So.
Okay. So now, how did you two meet? Because you both live in two different states, correct?
Yes.
So how did you meet?
Yeah. All right. Oh, I get to do it. Okay. So I am heavily involved with an organization called Blackson.io. It's to elevate the voices of Black IO psychologists. And I've been involved for years. And V has been an ally member and supporter for years as well. And we were going to have a session on allyship. And it was going to be with Victoria and the co-founders. But one of the co-founders couldn't make it, so she asked me to step in. I was like, sure. So V and I met, I think, once before the session, really briefly, and then we showed up and we were just yes-anding each other the whole time. And we realized that our philosophies were so in sync. And so after that, we were able to keep in touch. And this was right at the start of COVID. So it was the fall of 2020. And then from there, actually, I mentioned to Victoria I wanted to transition into specifically focusing on the DEI space, and she asked me if I ever thought about owning a business. I said no, and then she asked me if I ever thought about writing a book, and I said no. And by May of 2021, I was doing both with her at Mattingly, and had a great 3 years partnering together. Earlier this year, I spun off into my own company, Plan to Action. But as you can tell, we still are really close. Yeah. We're sharing a room here at SHRM. We're presenting tomorrow. So we call each other Biz Besties, and it's been a great few years.
Well, I like that phrase, Biz Besties.
Yeah, Biz Besties.
I love that. Awesome. Well, how do you define allyship and what it means to be a good ally?
Yeah. So the way we talk about allyship is to really prevent a lot of the bad performative allyship that happens out there. And so allyship is an ongoing partnership between what we like to call the ally and the partner who work together to solve some sort of goal that has to do with inclusion, social justice, or fairness.
Okay. And what does it mean to be a good ally? Because, again, we hear the term ally, and sometimes it is associated in a negative connotation. So if our audience is looking to be an ally, but a good ally, what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say if you think about how Victoria defined it, one piece is we talked about partnership, right? So sometimes when we do allyship wrong, we're so focused on us as an ally. What are we doing? We forget the partner. So remembering that you have to bring that person along that you're wanting to support, that's a key piece. But then two, the other real big one that we will die on this hill is that inclusion is a behavior. It's a verb. It's what you do. And so allyship is an inclusive behavior, which immediately says to be an ally, you have to act. There has to be some kind of action involved. So that's one of the biggest takeaways, because sometimes we just like to say, well, I'm an ally. I'm an ally to the Black community. What does that mean?
Right.
What are you doing to
Right.
be that ally?
And even though I certainly try to be an ally and I certainly try to engage in ally behaviors, I never call myself an ally, right? I never want to use that term for myself because it's not an identity. It should be based on my actions. And I know if someone calls me their ally, that I'm actually doing it right.
Right. So you know you're being a good ally based on your behaviors and your partner identifying you as an ally.
Exactly.
Sounds good. Got it. Okay. So what's one thing both of you wish everyone understood about the work of being an ally?
It's a fluid concept. So what I mean is, depending on who is in the position to hold the power, the privilege, the status, that's the person who can step up and be an ally. And depending on what that situation is, that can very much flex from person to person. So for example, Certrice and I, when people look at us, they think, oh, Victoria is the white person, so she must be the ally to Certrice. But Certrice has been my mental health ally. She's been my motherhood ally. She's been my hair loss ally. She's been my ally in so many different ways that we don't relate to each other over it, but we have that difference and we have that shared support across that difference. And that's what allyship is. I'm actually writing a 2-part book right now on allyship, and it's 2 books in one. One half is for the ally, one half is for the partner. And when you get into the middle, it's actually the end of both books, and it will say, and they might just end up being an ally to you. You flip it over, and you might just end up being an ally to them. And so it compels you to read the other side of the book, because you thought this whole time, oh, I'm just going to always be a partner. Well, actually, no, I'm going to be an ally sometimes too.
Right. So it works both ways.
Exactly.
Got it. Awesome. What does that look like in action? In any space, right? So you shared how Certrice has been an ally for you in many ways, whether it was motherhood or your mental health. What does that look like in terms of like actions of an ally?
Yeah, we'll talk about this in a couple different ways. One is big A allyship or little A allyship. Sometimes we think of allyship and it feels very daunting, and we think of the big A, right? So putting yourself on the line, which sometimes that's what it is. Allyship can come with real risks. If you really want to dive in, you see something wrong, it may hurt you to speak up on behalf of your partner, right? To put yourself on the line. Or like I said, Victoria opened her door to her company to me and said, I will give you equity in this company. You have a C-suite title. You're co-founder. Like, go out there and do it. I could have failed. I could have tanked her whole business, right? And so she put herself on the line as an ally to give me, her partner, that platform. And so there is risk involved in those big A actions of supporting. However, there's little A allyship, right? And that could be, someone gets my name wrong and she's like, oh, it's Certrice with an S, right? And so those little things are making sure someone's getting someone's pronouns right. Those little, what we refer to as micro affirmations, right? So small behaviors that we do. So there's all kinds of levels. We could talk mentorship, sponsorship. If you're in the workplace, it could be advocating for certain policies. There's a lot of different ways allyship can look, but I would say the key piece behind what that action would look like goes back to the fact that this is a relationship with your partner. Talk to them. What do they need? Do they need those small things? Do they need something bigger? And that'll help you know what actions you actually need to take.
Yeah.
Another good rule of thumb is using the platinum rule instead of the golden rule.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
So golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated.
Nice.
Platinum rule, treat others how they want to be treated. And so as Patrice just shared, you need to talk to your partner to be that good ally, to figure out what are those actions you can take to actually support and advocate for them in a meaningful way.
Yeah. So I want to talk about allyship in the workplace. And what does good allyship look like, or how can an ally support their partner, even in the workplace? And there's various scenarios that can be encountered in the workplace that would require allyship in a partner. But if I am looking to be an ally in the workplace, what does that look like, or what are some things that I can do?
I did my dissertation research on allyship, and the 3 primary behaviors we focused on was mentorship, sponsorship, and amplification.
Okay.
So how can we support people from a mentoring standpoint? How can we lift people up through the organization from a sponsoring standpoint? And how can we amplify voices? So giving people platform that typically don't have it, so their voice is able to be heard. So those would be like 3 broad areas. But I don't know if Patrice, if you have like specific examples.
Yeah, well, I actually want to give another framework we like to use, right? So I talked about the big A, little a. We also like to look at it kind of in a grid manner. So allyship, it can be ongoing or it can be in the moment. So ongoing is going to get into like the mentorship, sponsorship, building that long term. In the moment, it might be amplification. So how many of us have been in a meeting?
Yes.
You say something, nobody really acknowledges it. And then a couple minutes later, somebody else says basically the same thing. And it's
Everyone,
like, oh my
it's
gosh,
golden.
this is amazing, right? So if you want to amplify that person, you say, oh, you know what? I think Victoria was saying something similar earlier. V, do you want to add something to that? Right? And just giving them a little bit of space to get that credit, to get that recognition publicly. So that's a small thing you can do in any conversation. Similar with centering, right?
Yes.
Centering, it's so easy for us to focus on ourselves sometimes, or even want to relate to someone. They're telling you their story, their experience, and then you're like, oh yeah, I've had this and da-da-da. And you realize, oh wait, I just made this about me. Let me bring it back to you, right? So there's these little things we can do in the moment. And that's on that one-on-one level. Now, the other part of this grid is it could also be group, right? So you have multiple partners, you're learning more, and you might realize, oh, wait, let's say we've talked to a lot of people in the LGBTQ community, and we realize that we have policies in place for things like our parental leave that aren't helping them, right? Or maybe it's our bereavement or whatever it might be. We can advocate for changes at a policy level in our organization that will impact a whole group. So that's where we can move that allyship into more of advocacy in an organization and get at that more high level policy, getting at systemic change.
Yeah. Well, that was actually one of my questions, was around kind of like policy and advocacy in the workplace, and how allyship plays a role in that. So I'm grateful that you shared that. How can allies be supportive without reinforcing stereotypes or tokenizing the partner?
I think that really comes down to having a genuine, authentic relationship with that partner. My secret sauce behind allyship comes back to unconscious bias. And so a lot of research shows that even though unconscious bias training increases our awareness of bias, it doesn't actually reduce our biases against others. It's having meaningful, ongoing interactions with people who belong to groups for the biases that we hold. That's what actually starts chipping away at biases. So I have this secret agenda when it comes to allyship to get as many people to cross their differences, whether it's gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, caregiver status, neurodiversity, whatever it is, to put themselves out there and develop these meaningful relationships with people who are different than them. And that way we won't get into the tokenization and the stereotypes, because we're going to be reducing our biases as a result.
Got it. So sounds like very fundamental things, right? Build relationships. As you all are talking, I'm even thinking about just even my relationship with my best friend, right? Never thought of it in the space of allyship and partnership. These were just day-to-day things that we did for each other. So whether it was, speaking up or supporting each other. So why do you all think that there is this daunting feeling around the word allyship?
It goes back to that risk that I talked about, right? When we think of allyship and what it means to stand up and speak out for someone, it's aligning yourself with that. And you're like, ooh, if I stand up and speak out, are they going to think of me some type of way? But I always encourage allies to consider, if it's that scary and hard for you to speak up, think about how hard it is for your partner, right? The person in that space. I'm a Black woman. I need to speak up. I might get considered, right? Like, oh, the angry Black woman, right? So if you can speak up with me, that helps, right? It helps ease that. And so just reminding people that, yes, what you're going through can be fearful. It can involve risk, but just think of that other side and the support you're giving. So that's one thought.
I also think the term ally has gotten dragged through the mud over the last few years because there's just been a lot of allyship gone wrong. People saying, I'm an ally, but they don't actually do any of the work, which is why we talk about it in terms of actions, which is why we talk about it in terms of partnership. And so when people are calling themselves allies and then getting condemned for it because they're not doing it right, then why would that make someone else want to be an ally? And so I want to bring ally back. I want to bring the word back.
Yes.
It's not a 4-letter word. Well, technically it is, but it's not one of those ones. It's not one of those ones.
Right. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you. What does bad allyship look like?
Ooh, one thing, and I was just thinking about this, one piece of allyship where it goes wrong is people are so well-intended, right? Saying I'm an ally, it's well-intended. Or saying, I read this book, I listened to the Honest HR podcast, I got skills, I know what to do now, and just going out and doing things, right? And like I said, forgetting to bring the partner. So now that's where we get into saviorism, right? And it's, I know all the answers. I know you're a Black woman, girl, I got you. I'm gonna fix all your problems. And you're like, excuse me, did I say I have problems? And so that's where sometimes, again, it can get that bad rep and it can go wrong is you're so well-intended. You want to help, you want to put people in, and the next thing you know, you're tokenizing them because you're like, well, we need someone Black, so I'm gonna just shove this person in the role.
Yes.
And so there's all these little things sometimes we do with the best intentions, but we didn't think it all the way through. We didn't have that conversation to figure out, is this actually something that's helpful?
Yeah. Being a great ally requires getting consent from the person or group that you're trying to serve.
That was going to be my next question. So perfect.
So when you don't get that consent is whenever you have these saviorism issues, when you have these issues of, good intentions gone wrong. And so think about, like, did I get consent from this group or individual before I go off and do this big allyship action?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what does the consent look like? Is it just asking? And if you can give me an example.
Yeah, I think it's asking, but it's also like co-conspirating.
Okay.
So going up to that person and saying, hey, I have an idea. I want to help. What do you think? Is there something better we could possibly do? And whatever that idea is, it's shared between those two individuals rather than it just being, I'm going to come in and save the day.
Right. Or I'm just going to come in and tell you what I need, right? I think the collaboration has to come from both sides and it needs to be a joint discussion because neither partner, right, the partner or the ally is going to have all of the answers or all of the pieces, or else we wouldn't need each other. We wouldn't need the relationship. So making sure that we're collaborating in that space, I think is where you get the most benefit. And so, again, thinking of the different situations we're in, when I started with her, we had that she had the conversation of, have you thought about this? Here, go spend some time to think on it. And then I came back and I was like, well, what about this? We could work through things and then we'd check in throughout. And then again, there's also times where I support V. And so she'll come to me and she's like, okay, well, what about this? Or, I'm trying to be an ally here. Am I doing this right? Or is this wrong? And I'll be like, yeah, girl, don't do that.
Yeah. Right. That's where the relationship comes in.
Right. And then sometimes I'm like, no, that's fine. It's fine. And so being able to do that. And I'd like to think that, we do the same thing with her. Like, she said mental health. I'd be like, hey, I want to give you this space. Is that what you need? Is this not? Or I'd be like, hey, you need the space.
Yes.
And working through those spaces. So the collaboration.
Yeah. What policies and best practices HR leaders can implement to promote allyship within the workplace?
I think one policy is around how to leverage allies with employee resource groups. And I feel like allies should be a part and welcome into employee resource groups, but we can't also forget about that affinity that's necessary that employee resource groups provide. So, when is a closed door session? What are open door sessions? And being really clear on when and how allies should be involved.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I worked with a client, it's $1 billion tech company, and they wanted to build this allyship program. And it was a really intense program. It was about 6 months, and they had some of their top leaders get involved. And we had a kickoff session. We had discussion groups in between. They had reading assignments in between, and they were able to do these small group conversations of how hard it is to be an ally as a top director, and leader in this company. And then we had surveys in between because again, it's behavior. So if we want to see if it's having an impact, we need to ask their team members, is your leader showing up as an ally as a result of this program? So we were measuring for impact. It was really robust, but one of the keys with this though, before you say, oh yeah, we can slap up an allyship program, they all volunteered. Allyship, when it comes to DEI, we talk about it, having a foundational required DEI training to make sure everyone has the same language for your company, sure, that can be okay. We cannot force anyone to be an ally because of what's involved, because there is risk, right?
Yeah.
Because you do have to care, because you have to have those genuine, authentic relationships. But so you have to wait for a person to be ready. But then once they're ready, let's make sure we're equipping them with the skills so you can build that program so they can learn what that looks like. And also, I think it was really important to have that cohort going through with them so they can learn from each other, because it can be hard, especially, in the workplace. We talk about these things like it's easy, but in the workplace, you got goals, right? You have priorities. Everybody's worried about the bottom line.
Yes.
You don't have a lot of time. So putting something like this on top of it, having to slow down, have conversations and learn about someone, we don't always have time for that, especially as a top leader. So being able to talk to people about how do we make space to be better humans while also getting our job done.
Do you call it allyship within the workplace, or is it called something else?
Yeah, it depends on where you go. I've used allyship. Like I said, we've also mentorship and sponsorship are parts of allyship to us, but sometimes you may just hear them say those words instead of allyship.
The key differentiator is you could be exactly like someone else and be their mentor or their sponsor. The beauty of allyship is that you are going across some sort of difference. We are different in some sort of major way, and I'm in the in group, and my partner's in the quote unquote out group, right? And I'm leveraging my power, my privilege, my status to help them. And so having that across difference, I feel like is really important. And that's what makes it allyship and makes it so special.
Yeah. What are the benefits of allyship?
I think one is just being involved in these efforts. There was some research that looked at what keeps people from being allies, and it wasn't that they didn't care. It wasn't that they were against it. It was that no one had asked them to be involved. So they never felt like it was their place. So the sheer asking someone to come in and, hey, can you get involved in this effort as an ally? Like that, there's meaning and purpose to that. And I think people want to be involved with I&D efforts, but they don't know where they fit in. And allyship gives them a place to fit in.
Yeah, and research has shown that when organizations involve allies in their DEI efforts, they make more progress to their DEI goals. So for a business, it's going to help you as an organization. But then I'll also say for an individual, there's something to that. And I won't say for every single person, not everybody gets this pleasure, but there is some joy that you find in yourself when you are able to support someone, right? When you're able to give back, that it kind of comes from that altruism, right? The feeling that gives you, the dopamine, that's another piece of it as well on an individual level.
Yep. So for allyship, what I hear is making it about the partner, not about you as the ally. And you all shared examples of ways to be an ally, right? And I think that oftentimes when we hear the term ally, we associate it with either race or just gender, right? And I love that you, Dr. V, you shared how Certrice has been your mental health ally, you know, your hair loss ally. Are there other ways outside of what we traditionally associate allyship to be, whether that's race or gender, that people can be allies and partners?
Yeah. Honestly, there are so many identities, right? We're all
Yes.
made up of so many identities, and allyship can be tied to any of that. One other piece I would add, and then I'll let you add too, is it's also not always in the direction we think. Because so not only do we like to boil it down to like race or gender, we typically will say like it's black and white. And so
Yes.
you, as the white person, you're my allies. But there's times where we will be in a place and V is the only white person. And I have to be her ally in that
Right.
situation and help her show up and be respected, not be like, what's this white girl doing here? Right. And I stand up for her. So we always talk about another key piece of allyship is context. Context is so important of who can be the ally. And that's why another reason why it can change so much. But any other parts of that you want to add, Dee?
Yeah, I just think of, able-bodied allies, veteran allies, neurodivergent allies, immigrant allies.
Yeah.
There's just so many different areas. And if you think about the privilege wheel, and it shows all the different slices of identity, and the most privileged is on the outside and the least privileged is on the inside. If you're ever on the outside of that circle, ever, so white, male, able-bodied, straight, you can go on and on and on. You have an opportunity, and I would say, an obligation in some ways to be a good human, to be an ally in that scenario.
Yes. Awesome. Well, one last question before we wrap it up. And I'm curious to know, what are 3 things, probably more, I know there's more, but what are 3 things our audience can do, even just from a starting point, to be a better ally?
So one thing we've already said is remember that it's a verb, right? So if you take away one thing from this conversation, that there has to be action. And
I'd also say, don't call yourself an ally. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Just be an ally. Just do the
Don't raise your hand
thing.
and be like, I'm an ally.
Do the thing. Don't call yourself an ally.
don't put up black squares or rainbows.
Don't put up weird stuff on social media thinking you're being an ally. Just do the work, and others will call you such.
Yeah. And then just take the time to really build those relationships. That relationship building is key. And another piece of that we haven't mentioned yet is the active listening, which I always joke my clients say I'm really good at, but my husband maybe is like, I don't know, right? And so again, context matters, but pulling yourself out of wanting to respond to people when they're sharing and just opening up to listen to their experience and ask them what they need versus trying to problem solve on your own.
Well, this has been very helpful, even for myself. And thank you so much, Dr. V and Certrice, for sharing your knowledge and deep insights as it relates to allyship. And I know one takeaway for me is that allyship is a verb, right? It is an action. And so rather than, plastering it on my social media that I'm an ally, what matters is the work that I do, and getting the consent from my partner, and asking what are some ways that I can show up and support them. That is going to be it for this week's of Honest HR. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is approved to provide 0.5 professional development credits, or PDCs, towards SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. Enter this PDC activity ID into your SHRM activity portal to claim your credit. 26-NKTN4. Again, the PDC activity ID is 26-NKTN4. Please note that this code expires February 1st, 2026.